Silence. That was how the council chamber of Aurelian was described by historians, a silence not of peace, but of suffocation. The hall stretched for miles, its walls built from crystalline alloys that shimmered with starlight stolen from dying suns. Here, the great civilizations of the galaxy convened. Here, destinies were written and worlds decided. Here, for 6,000 years, order was enforced under the banner of the Galactic Council. And here, for the first time in its recorded history, a world rose to defy them. Earth. The humans stood at the center of the chamber, an envoy of 5 delegates draped in austere uniforms of midnight black. No ornament. No flowing robes like the Irinians. No towering plumes like the Corvathi. No glimmering silks like the Hilarii. Just black, stark, unyielding, deliberate. Ambassador Celine Ward, chosen to speak for Earth, had a voice like tempered steel. For decades, she said, each syllable echoing across the vaulted chamber, we have abided by council law. We have sent resources, paid tribute, offered fleets for campaigns not our own. And what has Earth received in return? Chains disguised as treaties. Demands masquerading as unity. Enough. The word struck like a blade. Gasps rippled through the hall. Some delegates hissed, others whispered frantically into their translators. A few sat in frozen silence, their faces unreadable. The Corvathi archcommander slammed his clawed fist onto the bench. You dare? His voice thundered across the chamber. Without the council, your kind would still be crawling in the mud of your primitive oceans. Celine did not flinch. Without the council, Commander, we would still have our freedom. That is worth more than your fleets, more than your protection, more than the scraps from your table. For a heartbeat, the entire chamber seemed to tilt on the edge of chaos. The Hilarii High Consul rose with a sweeping motion of their silken sleeves. Humans, listen carefully. To walk away from the council is not defiance, it is suicide. Every world that has ever attempted secession has been erased, their skies burned, their history scattered into ash. Celine's eyes gleamed in the half-light. Then perhaps history will remember Earth as the world that stood where others fell. The silence returned, heavier this time, smothering. And then, with a motion as calm as it was irrevocable, Celine placed the council seal, the emblem of Earth's membership, upon the crystalline floor. The seal dissolved instantly, absorbed by the chamber's living architecture. Its fading light was the soundless toll of a bell, a finality that none present could ignore. Earth had severed itself from the council. The galaxy reeled. News spread faster than the speed of light itself, carried by the trade networks, the subspace channels, the whispered fears of a million worlds. Some called humanity brave, others reckless. A few, those in chains, those whose skies were patrolled by council fleets, whispered prayers to Earth, daring to dream that if one could rise, perhaps others might too. But for the council itself, the act was nothing less than heresy. In the weeks that followed, sanctions fell upon Earth like a storm of knives. Trade routes were severed. Portals were locked. Patrols intercepted any vessel marked with the Terran sigil. Economies faltered, fleets braced for famine. Yet, to the shock of many, humanity did not collapse. Earth endured. For behind Celine Ward's speech, behind the defiant gesture, lay something the council had failed to see. Humanity had been preparing for this. Quietly. Patiently. For decades, perhaps even longer. On the dark side of Luna, hidden within craters shielded from prying scanners, an armada stirred. Ships unlike any the council had catalogued, angular, brutal, clad in alloys whose signatures defied conventional scans. Their engines pulsed with drives reverse-engineered from relics of ancient ruins long dismissed as primitive artifacts. These were not the polished vessels Earth showed at council reviews. These were not the tribute fleets sent to die in council wars. These were humanity's own, secret, sovereign, terrifying. The Terran Defense Fleet, whispered by insiders as the Black Armada. Inside Earth's military bastion of New Geneva, Selene stood before a vast display, her reflection caught in the shimmer of 100 orbiting warships. General Marcus Hale, scarred veteran of Council campaigns, stood at her side. "They'll come for us," Hale said simply. His voice was gravel, weathered by war. "They won't allow a clean break. The Council's order is built on fear, and fear requires example." Selene nodded, though her hands tightened behind her back. "I know. But we won't be the example they expect." A pause. The hum of the room filled the silence. Hale finally spoke again, his eyes locked on the dark horizon of space. "Do you believe we can win?" "No," Selene said. Then, with a quiet fire that burned brighter than the stars, "but I believe we can change everything." The first test came not in open war, but in whispers. Council agents infiltrated Terran space, sowing dissent, sabotaging supply lines, spreading rumors of famine and collapse. But they found themselves hunted by shadows. Entire teams vanished in the undercities of Earth, never to return. Networks of resistance, once forced to obey Council decrees, now turned their skills toward defending their homeworld. It was as if Earth had shed a mask. The Council had seen humanity as a backwater race, useful, pliable, expendable. Now, they faced something else entirely. A species unshackled. A people willing to gamble everything on sovereignty. And beyond Earth, in distant corners of the galaxy, sparks began to catch. Worlds under Council oppression whispered more openly. The rebellion of one world had lit a flame across the stars. In the chamber of Aurelian, the Council convened once more. The Korvathi demanded invasion. The Hilarii urged caution, fearing the humans had hidden strength. Others argued endlessly, their voices echoing into the void. But for the first time in centuries, the Council was divided. And division was weakness. Above Earth, the Black Armada ignited its drives. Ships cast shadows across the moon, across the planet, across the very heart of humanity. Engines thundered like the drums of war. Selene Ward stood at the command dais, her voice calm but carrying the weight of destiny. "Earth has broken its chains," she said. "Now the galaxy must decide whether it will tighten the noose, or feel what happens when a free world fights back." And with that, humanity stepped into the abyss. The fracture had begun. War did not begin with fleets clashing in the void. It began with whispers, and with fire. The Council's sanctions were meant to strangle Earth slowly, cutting it off from trade, technology, and supplies. But the strategy backfired. Humanity, cornered and desperate, became something the Council had not expected: inventive, resourceful, unyielding. Earth adapted. Where rare metals no longer flowed from the stars, Earth dug deeper into its crust. Where alien trade networks abandoned them, humans rebuilt their own. Hydroponic towers rose across the continents, feeding billions. Energy grids once tied to Council reactors now drew from fusion cores perfected in secret labs. Every blockade forced humanity to innovate. Every sanction forged another weapon. But the greatest upheaval came not from Earth itself, but from the galaxy beyond. In the slave pits of Dravik, miners whispered of a world that had broken its chains. In the frozen colonies of Avon Prime, workers dared to hope that one day, they too might defy the Council. On the prison world of Corvex, where dissidents rotted in silence, chants of "Earth stands free" spread like wildfire. The Council had sought to isolate Earth. Instead, it had lit the match of rebellion. The Council's response was swift. A fleet of 50 warships, banners of the Korvathi Empire stretched across their armored hulls, descended into Terran space. It was meant to be a demonstration, a warning to all other worlds. Earth would kneel, or Earth would burn. At the head of the armada, Lord Commander Veyrath of the Korvathi exuded confidence. From the bridge of his flagship, he gazed upon the blue-green marble of Earth with contempt. One world, he sneered, his voice rasping through his fanged maw. One insignificant world believes it can break the council. We will carve their lesson into the stars. The order was given. The fleet advanced. And then, the void trembled. From the dark side of Luna, shadows emerged. Angular, obsidian warships streaked into the void like blades drawn from a sheath. The Black Armada. Varatha's scanners faltered, his officers struggling to identify the ships. Their alloys reflected no known signature. Their engines pulsed with alien rhythms. And their weapons. The first strike came without warning. A Terran warship unleashed a beam of searing light, not plasma, not ion, but something the Council had never catalogued. It pierced through a Korvathi cruiser as if it were paper, slicing it in half. Fire bloomed across the void. The Korvathi roared and counterattacked. Plasma bolts streaked across space, slamming into Terran shields. But humanity's ships absorbed the onslaught, their barriers shimmering with unnatural resilience. Celine Ward stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Erebus, her hands gripping the command rail. General Hale's voice crackled through the comms. First contact, first kill. The galaxy is watching. Then let them see, Celine replied. The battle that followed was short, brutal, decisive. The Korvathi fleet, expecting an easy victory, instead found itself torn apart. Terran ships moved with ruthless coordination, exploiting weaknesses the Council fleets had never needed to guard. For centuries, the Council had fought only rebellions with sticks and stones. Now, they faced a predator they had unknowingly raised. When the smoke cleared, only a handful of Korvathi ships limped back into hyperspace. The rest drifted as wreckage, their burning hulks orbiting Earth as grim monuments. For the first time in recorded history, a Council fleet had been broken. The galaxy erupted. On the distant world of Ithar, thousands of laborers stormed a Council garrison, armed with stolen rifles. On Zyrian Station, smugglers broadcast the battle across subspace, smuggling recordings of Terran warships carving through the mighty Korvathi. On Valen Prime, entire crowds poured into the streets, chanting Earth's name. The Council's iron grip, once unshakable, began to slip. But within the Council chamber of Aurelian, chaos reigned. Delegates shouted over one another, voices rising in rage and panic. The Korvathi demanded vengeance, urging the extermination of Earth at any cost. The Hilarii called for negotiation, their voices dripping with fear of escalation. Others whispered in the shadows, their loyalties shifting as they weighed Earth's unexpected strength. At the center of the storm, the Grand Arbiter of the Council, a being older than empires, raised his staff for silence. If Earth's rebellion spreads, the Council itself may fracture, he warned. His eyes, pale and burning with age, swept across the chamber. Order must be preserved. At all costs. Yet even he could not hide the tremor in his voice. Back on Earth, the mood was electric. Humanity had done the impossible, not just surviving, but striking back. But beneath the celebration, Celine knew the truth. The Korvathi defeat was not the end. It was the beginning. In the War Council of New Geneva, she addressed the gathered commanders. Holograms of distant rebellions flickered across the room, uprisings, protests, defections. The Council will not forgive this humiliation, Celine said. They will send more fleets, larger, stronger. They will burn entire sectors if they must. We cannot fight them everywhere. Then what do we do? Asked Hale. Celine's gaze swept the room. We don't fight them everywhere. We light fires where they least expect. We turn their empire against itself. And when the flames are high enough, the Council will burn. So it began. Terran ships slipped beyond blockades, carrying weapons to rebels on distant worlds. Hidden transmitters spread messages of defiance, broadcasting Earth's victory. Saboteurs struck at Council supply lines, vanishing before retaliation could arrive. The galaxy descended into disorder. Worlds once bound by fear now stirred with rebellion. Fleets once united under the Council banner now splintered, commanders questioning whether to shed more blood for an order already crumbling. And through it all, Earth became the symbol, the spark that had ignited the firestorm. Yet, in the depths of space, shadows gathered. The Council was not broken, not yet. In secret shipyards, vast armadas were forged. Weapons of terrible power were awakened from their slumber. For if Earth had its black armada, the Council had relics of its own, machines built in forgotten wars, engines of annihilation hidden away for the day when unity faltered. The day had come. In the quiet of her chamber, Celine stared out at the stars. Her reflection looked older than it had months ago, lines etched by burden and sleepless nights. The galaxy was burning. Some called her a savior. Others, a destroyer. And deep down, in the silence between her breaths, she wondered which she truly was. For beyond the horizon, the Council's response was coming. And when it arrived, the fire Earth had lit might consume the entire cosmos. The storm came. From the black void beyond the rim, the Council unleashed its fury. It was no longer a fleet, no longer a show of force. It was an armada, thousands of warships stretched across the stars, their banners blazing with the emblems of half the known galaxy. Massive carriers, dreadnoughts older than Earth's written history, and leviathans dredged from forgotten shipyards where ancient wars had buried their ghosts. At its heart, a weapon that had not been seen in millennia, the Heirloom Forge, a world engine capable of burning entire planets to cinders. Its arrival in Terran space was meant to be the Council's answer, the final word to all who dared to question their rule. And for the first time, even Earth trembled. Celine Ward stood on the bridge of the Erebus, her reflection stretched thin across the viewing glass. The Council's armada glittered in the distance like a false constellation, 1,000 suns of hatred converging upon her homeworld. General Hale's voice was steady, but the steel in it was strained. They've committed everything. If we fall here, Earth is ash. If we win. He trailed off, unable to finish. Celine did. If we win, the galaxy is free. She drew in a breath, every word meant for history itself. Transmit to all fleets. Moments later, her voice echoed across the comms, carried to every Terran warship, every rebel vessel that had joined their cause, every fighter clinging to the dream of freedom. Humanity does not stand alone. Every world that has tasted the Council's chains watches us now. We will not break. We will not bow. Today, we fight not just for Earth, but for every soul that dreams of a free sky. The silence after her words was brief, but in that silence, stars themselves seemed to wait. Then, like a storm breaking upon a cliff, the Black Armada surged forward. The void erupted. Terran warships screamed into battle, their angular hulls cutting across the darkness. Weapons flared, beams of impossible light, missiles that bent gravity itself, rail cannons roaring like thunder across the abyss. The Council's ships responded with equal fury, plasma storms and ion lances lashing across space, burning trails into the void. The first clash was chaos. Entire squadrons vanished in blossoms of fire. Terran destroyers shredded Council frigates, only to be annihilated by the wrath of dreadnought batteries. Everywhere, death painted the stars. But the Council had not come merely to fight fleets. The Heirloom Forge advanced, its core igniting with a malignant glow. With a single strike, it tore through a rebel moon base, reducing it to incandescent dust. Billions screamed into silence. The message was clear: resist, and die as ash. Celine's hands tightened on the command rail. That engine is the battle, she whispered. Hale nodded grimly. Then we take it down, or nothing else matters. But how? The forge was a fortress unto itself, shielded by layers of energy fields older than Earth's pyramids. No fleet had ever breached one. Unless... Celine turned sharply. The relic drives, she said. The cores we've hidden. The Council thinks we've reverse-engineered only weapons, but what if we use the drives themselves? Hale's eyes widened. You'd tear open space itself. It's suicide. Not if we guide it, Celine replied, her voice low, certain. Not if we turn their own arrogance against them. The plan was madness. But madness was all Earth had left. While the main fleet engaged the Council, a strike wing of Terran ships broke away, engines burning brighter than suns. Among them was the Erebus, carrying Celine and Hale. Their target, the Forge's core. Council dreadnoughts moved to intercept, but Earth's allies, ragged rebels from across the stars, smugglers, pirates, exiles, hurled themselves into the path of the Armada. Ships with no hope of surviving made their stand, clearing a path bought with blood. The Erebus surged forward, shields flickering, hull burning. The Forge loomed ahead, vast as a continent, its surface bristling with weapons. Every shot that struck the Terran flagship was a hammer blow, but still it pressed on. Inside the control chamber, alarms shrieked. The relic drives throbbed with unstable energy, space itself warping at their edges. Hale's voice was grim. Once we trigger it, there's no turning back. Celine looked at him, her face illuminated by the glow of collapsing space. Then let this be the turning of everything. She gave the order. The relic drives ignited. Reality screamed. A rift tore open in the heart of the Forge, space itself unraveling like cloth ripped by unseen hands. Energy cascaded outward, devouring shields, splitting metal, bending light. The Forge convulsed, its engines wailing as its ancient core met forces it was never meant to contain. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. And then, with a light brighter than any star, the Arelem Forge collapsed into the rift it had birthed, dragging with it half the Council Armada in a spiral of annihilation. Ships vanished into the abyss, their screams echoing across comms until silence claimed them. The rift snapped shut. The Forge was gone. The battlefield fell silent. What remained of the Council's fleet drifted, leaderless, their dreadnoughts shattered, their commanders dead or fleeing. The Black Armada, bloodied but unbroken, stood defiant against the void. Earth had done the unthinkable. The Council had been broken. In the aftermath, the galaxy trembled. News of the Forge's destruction spread faster than fire in a dry forest. Worlds that had long suffered under Council law arose in open rebellion. Chains were shattered. Flags of freedom unfurled where once only silence reigned. The Galactic Council, fractured and humiliated, found itself powerless to hold together its dominion. Civilizations withdrew. Alliances dissolved. The order that had endured for 6,000 years crumbled in mere months. And at the center of it all, Earth. Celine Ward stood once more at New Geneva, gazing upon the planet she had fought to protect. The skies were scarred, the fleets battered, but Earth still lived. General Hale approached, his face etched with exhaustion, yet alive. "We lit the fire," he said softly. Celine's gaze lingered on the horizon, where dawn broke across the land. "Yes," she whispered. "But it will be up to the galaxy to decide what burns, and what grows from the ashes." And so history was written. Earth, once a backwater world mocked by the great civilizations, had broken from the Council, and in doing so, had broken the cosmos itself. Some called it liberation. Others called it chaos. But none could deny that the stars would never again be the same. For the age of the Council was over. And the age of humanity had begun.